With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Hey, this is James O'Neill. 12 people, including children, were killed and up to 29 injured when 2 gunmen opened fire at Sydney's Bondi Beach during the Hanukah festival, Hanukah by the Sea. One attacker, 24-year-old Navita Kram of Bondirig, was shot and arrested. The second gunman was killed. Authorities confirmed the attack was an act of terrorism targeting Jewish Australians. An improvised explosive device was found and removed. Witnesses described chaos as people fled or hid. Israeli officials criticized Australia for ignoring warnings about rising anti-Semitism. ASIO said the terrorism threat level remains probable, though no further attacks are currently indicated.
This afternoon, there has been a devastating terrorist incident at Bondi at the Hanukah by the Sea celebration. This is a targeted attack on Jewish Australians on the first day of Hanukah, which should be a day of joy, a celebration of faith. An act of evil anti-Semitism, terrorism, that has struck the heart of our nation. An attack on Jewish Australians is an attack on every Australian, and every Australian tonight will be, like me, devastated.
Police detained a person of interest after a shooting at Brown University's engineering building killed 2 people and wounded 9. Surveillance footage showed an unidentified individual dressed in black walking from the scene. 7 victims are in stable condition, 1 remains critical, and 1 was discharged. The campus shelter-in-place order was lifted, though crime scene restrictions remain. University leaders canceled all remaining fall semester classes and exams, citing trauma and safety concerns, and assured students of ongoing support. Providence Mayor Brett Smiley thanked the FBI for rapid assistance. Authorities expect to release additional details as evidence collection and interviews continue. German police arrested 5 men, 3 Moroccans, 1 Syrian, and 1 Egyptian, over an alleged Islamist plot to attack a Christmas market in Dingolfing, Bavaria. Authorities say the Egyptian suspect, believed to be a mosque prayer leader, recruited the others for a vehicle attack, while the Syrian encouraged the plot. Bavarian officials praised a rapid, coordinated response among intelligence and police agencies, saying the arrest likely prevented an imminent attack. The case comes amid heightened fears across Germany, where multiple Christmas markets have been canceled due to high security costs and past Islamist attacks on such events. The European Union is reportedly abandoning its planned ban on combustion engines by 2035 after major resistance from Germany, Italy, Poland, and the Czech Republic. According to EPP leader Manfred Weber, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has agreed to replace the ban with a 90% emissions reduction target, meaning current engines can continue to be produced and sold. Weber and industry leaders say the shift preserves climate goals while protecting technological neutrality and industrial jobs. The compromise still requires formal approval. German and Italian leaders argue that an outright ban would devastate automotive manufacturing. Top Israeli officials criticized Australia's left-leaning government for failing to confront rising anti-Semitism before a terrorist attack at a Hanukah event in Sydney's Bondi Beach, where multiple gunmen killed at least 11 and injured 29, including a rabbi, police officer, and an Israeli citizen. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage.
Desperately sorry for the Jewish community in Sydney, which is quite considerable, but equally you realise actually the threat to the Jewish people is everywhere. It's not just in Manchester or in parts of North London, it's all over the world. And there is this real poison.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
There is a problem with medicine, and we can explain what it is by looking back to the discovery of penicillin. Penicillin, it turns out, was not just an accidental finding. Alexander Fleming discovered that mold he found in a culture dish was killing bacteria. But it took over 10 years before a team at Oxford University were able to isolate the active ingredient. They produced small quantities for preclinical and clinical trials, helping prove the compound was safe and could beat infection. However, they couldn't produce it at scale. In 1941, Andrew Jackson Moyer of the US Department of Agriculture the forerunner to the FDA, suggested changes to the manufacturing process, enabling mass production. It turns out medicines are not invented when someone discovers a new molecular entity. They are the product of key stakeholders working together collaboratively. Until medicine can be manufactured at scale, it may as well not exist. And in 2025, this is a problem. In the 1980s, pharmaceutical companies began outsourcing production. Suddenly the system was significantly less integrated. Someone with a new discovery today will find themselves disconnected from the rest of the development and manufacturing process. Companies that develop medicine are still happy to work with big established pharma companies, but the modern day Flemings are cut out of the system. The result is far fewer new medicines coming to market. We want to fix this by ensuring the pharma industry builds a more integrated supply chain. We also believe that doctors' expertise administering medicine should be included at the beginning of the process. We know that doctors on the front line have insights about how to repurpose medicine. Doctors should be able to report their findings so that the necessary testing can be completed and they can share the results worldwide. Learn more here and help us take medicines back to the future.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And I'd like to say a welcome to a Monday, but it's a dreadful Monday if you are in Australia or in that, for that matter, anywhere around the world. A mass killing, of course, at Bondi Beach. Bondi Beach. How did we get there? Yesterday was one of Australia's most iconic locations. Bondi was again under attack, with the Bondi Junction stabbings in April 2024 still fresh in our minds. Many have already concluded that Australia has changed irreparably for the worse. Will we ever come back? I don't know. While the impact of the terror incident at Bondi was emerging, the narrative was defined very quickly as a targeted attack on the Hanukah celebration. It may have well been, but do these early and definitive conclusions and the various lobby groups vying for attention distract us from broader questions such as, how the hell did we get to this place? Is there any going back? I don't think so. While we don't expect authorities to be omnipotent and ubiquitous, it's an obvious question. Have we seen a massive failure of governance over decades? Even if we succeed in stamping out anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, will this solve the problem? I think not. While they will be egged on, can our governments, state and federal, and even some local, by the way, stay away from the virtue signalling campaigns of harassment and censorship, and instead of throwing sops to powerful interest or impulsive authoritarian responses that treat all citizens as criminals, take a look at their own policies and assess if they are supporting and attracting terror. Surely this is not beyond their web of agencies, high-priced consultants, and even community organisations that are sustained by taxpayers. Australian governments and their agencies should face intense scrutiny on whether their policies are failing all Australians by introducing unnecessary levels of risk and stress. But who will do this? Certainly not the co-opted mainstream media. They're just about frothing at the mouth, aren't they? Frothing away, oh, bring on the blood. It's absolutely despicable. And I'm off script here a bit. I thought it was just deplorable that everybody became an expert in. It was the Palestinians, it was the Muslims, it could have been a psyop from the Israelis. Was it just a mad? All this. We needed to wait for the police to do their work. But what I did notice also was that the level of hatred, the hatred that was coming from both sides, both from Israel's side and the agitators in Australia who are agitating, such as Avi Yemeni. And I know that he served in the IDF in Israel, and he has a right to be outraged. But sometimes the incitement of angst or stress or attack on everybody because they don't agree with what he says or someone says, surely at a time like this we needed to sit back and just watch it unfold. How unpleasant that was is the understatement, but we needed to do that. But we didn't. And then we had on the other side, both sides hate each other. And I was doing some research today and I saw that this level of hatred, have we imported hatred from the Middle East? And many of our discussions on the Protagonists over the last months have been, can the Middle East ever be, can it ever see peace? I don't think so. The level of hatred is just too high. In Australia, we have that level of hatred. And the cheering on of people being killed, innocent people. I don't give a stuff. I don't give a shit whether they are Jewish, Muslims, Chinese, Pinkanese, Martians, or whatever. You do not kill innocent people. And this is where the boundaries should merge from different countries, because it is appalling that the baying for blood on either side still continues. But the level of hatred, the hatred for our fellow citizens or our fellow human beings, it is not going to go away. It is not going to go away under the governments we have now. And the opposition are no better. Stop taking sides. Govern for Australia. Govern for the people that live in Australia and respect human life. Because it will not get better. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And we're going to talk about this today, and as you can you get the impression, I'm not very happy with the dialogue. I was watching a Sky News before, and it just was it was just trash. And I've never seen this before. It was like the October 6 or 7, depending where you are, those murders of the Israelis. But the distortion that followed from that, and first of all, innocent people died. But the info wars or the propaganda that followed, these things just don't happen. If you look at in Iran, when they took out the Hamas leader, and we were told that Iran hated Israel, Israel hated Iran, Iran didn't like America, and all this. They all worked together to assassinate the then leader of Hamas. They worked together, Israel, Iran, and the US. Smoke and mirrors, a whole lot of it. So what we have to do is forget that. We need to look at the people that have been affected, the families, the community, and ask, why has this happened? And our guests today are just, I think, some of the best in the country. Dr. Bernie Powell from the Melbourne School of Theology, who's been on before. Shalini Barsin from the Brisbane East Side branch of the Libertarians. and Harry Hatzakilimanos, a retired detective. Thank you very much for joining us. I have to ask you, the level of putrid reporting and biased reporting. Harry, have you been, because you're a retired detective, you know bad things when they happen. Have you been sort of gobsmacked again at the narrative that's followed, out of the mouths of babes, or in this case, the politicians?
Yeah, the narrative came out very quick, very fast. And we've still got an ongoing investigation, and there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. So, yeah, I find it quite interesting, and a lot of similarities with what happened at Westfield Bondi Junction with the stabbing. So, yeah, and look, yeah, there's a lot of information out there, but we just need to get to the facts, and hopefully, sometime in the near future, we'll get some more clarity. But yeah, it seems to be this whipping up of hysteria, propaganda, fear, and like I said, this hate on, which is very un-Australian. I mean, I'm Greek background. My father came in '59. We kept our culture, but we assimilated. But there seems to be a real disconnect with what's happening in Australia at the moment. We've got people coming here from all different nationalities, religious backgrounds, and for some reason it's not meshing, and it looks like some of them are bringing their baggage from where they've come from, and it's creating a lot of issues, cost of living, also social tensions, youth crime. Yeah, and it's not only just it's in all states, in all capital cities, and even in country areas, and it doesn't seem that the core issues are being addressed. No, and this hasn't happened overnight either. No, it's been very slow.
And the Shalini, or Shelley, we'll call you, whichever comes to mind first up. Were you surprised at the narrative that was coming out of the media and the government? I mean, it was because there's a clip I was looking at. Chris Minns has often said, "We've got to stop this attack on the Jewish community." He's dead right. And then we have the Prime Minister who says, "We've got to stop this hate against the Muslims." He's quite right. But the hatred from either, whether it's from Israel or from say the Islam community, the level of hatred would seem to be irreparable. Yet it was throwing the blame bang on, and it was pointing, saying this is who was attacked. They seem to have forgotten that Australians were attacked. Yeah. Australians were attacked in a park, and I think that and I'll get into more a bit later on. I think that if you're looking at trying to create fear and destroy iconic places of Australia that says we are Australian, I think what's happened in Bondi the last couple of years at the Bondi Junction and here yesterday, I think that is destroying Australia. I mean, how the hell did we get here, Shelley?
Look, Mike, we have to say that Australia is not a battleground for international conflicts. So even though we have welcomed people from all nationalities, and we have, based on their skills, based on their our requirements, it doesn't mean that they bring their baggage with here and start fighting. If they want to do their community fighting, they should go back to their countries and do their fighting and finish that fight and come to Australia. Because Australia is a land of immigrants, and those immigrants who believe they're looking for a fresh start in life, who want to leave their baggage behind. What has happened yesterday, was it a surprise? I would say I was shocked with the way it happened, but the threat has been luring for over the years. It's been in making. The threat has been high because we have allowed too much liberties for the people to go out, do the demonstrations, voice their hatred, and hatred breeds hatred. a young person who constantly hears slogans of hatred within their community, in their homes, on the streets, in the colleges, with no checks and balances, is bound to get brainwashed. And in this particular case, we are seeing a 24-year-old Australian citizen who has committed this crime, along with his dad, apparently, which tells what would have gone, what sort of brainwashing would have happened for him to come to that stage wherein he's not even afraid. He's not even wearing a mask. He's going on a full spree, not even seeing whether he's killing a Jew or any other community or a Christian or anybody. He's on the spree. Anybody attending that festival over there, he is just there. It could be a Muslim as well he might have killed, which we won't even know unless, it's just the sheer hatred. But what is more sad is our politicians. They themselves are seeing Australia as different factions, a typical Marxist approach to seeing or addressing an issue. Above all these communities, names, identities, we are Australians first. And Australian security cannot be compromised. So there are a lot of answers they have to give to the community now.
Bernie, I have to, because you're a theologian and you study religions, I have to say that there's this sort of stuff, even though it is historical part of whether it's Islam or whether it's Christianity, there's always been violence associated with it. But it's the furthest thing away from God. It's the furthest thing away. And then I see the baying and the absolute baying of blood almost from politicians and the media, and both sides of the media too. Oh, it's bad Jews. Oh, bad Muslims. Oh, they're bad people. They killed innocent people. And if you go back to October 6th, because this has a lot to do with it, the hatred, go back to then, October 6 or 7, the amount of hatred, but the amount of killing of innocent people, and what followed onwards for the Palestinian people to be absolutely killed. I mean, these are the children and the innocents. I think we have to review what the West is all about, because at the moment we're doing sweet FA on whether we, to stop these killings. We are baying for blood. Government is baying for blood, inciting almost racial hatred or religious hatred or cultural hatred between different parties. And I think our politicians at this stage, both sides, cannot give us an answer, have got nothing to offer us, except they look glum, they look miserable because all these terrible things have happened to these innocent people. How do we fix it? And by the way, were you surprised at what happened? I'm not, because the level of hatred which has been imported from the Middle East is alive and well, isn't it? Especially in Australia.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. This is the 10th Islamic attack that's happened in Australia since 2014, where there's been deaths or injuries. So fortunately, there hasn't been one since 2016 was the last one. So we've had a good time. Possibly not right. The last one was in 2021, actually happened in a prison in Melbourne. But there's been since 2014, we've had them consistently every couple of years. So I wasn't surprised when this one came along. I was keeping an open mind, wondering what's been the cause of this. And a couple of things stood out to me. Firstly, that the government was very quick to brand it, or the police very quick to brand it a terrorist act. And they would usually have some kind of information before they would do that. And I noticed the ABC's reporting today that in the car that the father and the son left, there was an ISIS flag and also some extremist Islamic material. So they're picking the that seems to be the basis for this. The other thing, I watched as much of the video as thing as I could stomach. It was very interesting when the two were on the bridge shooting at people in the one particular area. Others tried to come and they waved them back. They didn't shoot at them. They said, go back, and they continued shooting in the one direction. So it was a very focused attack, particularly on the Jewish community, which was holding their Hanukah celebration in one particular playground. So that made me think, yeah, this is something that's been inspired by Islamist ideology, and that kind of made sense to me with my understanding of Islam. One of the things that's important to note is, and I was glad the government quickly came out on that, saying this is not a time for retribution. And I think it's important that we celebrate the Islamist ideology from Muslims, the people. And I was a bit fearful that there may be mobs going after Muslim communities here in Australia. That doesn't seem to have happened yet. But I think that's a really important point, that we recognise that there are people and there's an ideology, and we need to tackle the ideology rather than brand the whole population with that kind of approach. So, yeah, those would be the kinds of things that I looked at as I was thinking about this event.
Yeah, I've got to ask Harry, the identity of the shooters or dash terrorist, I think they were known to police. And if they were known to police, I mean, okay, part two of this, reports were, and the New South Wales Police Commissioner, and I think rightly so, said, let's just through this first of all, and we will investigate the other bits and pieces. Reports were that while the shots were being fired into the crowd of innocent people, the police did not return fire for around about 20 minutes. Again, if you look at some of the incidents of police being shot at in other parts of, or doing their duty around Australia, it would seem that command is just like this lump of cement, doesn't do much at all, and it's too late. Why wouldn't they have returned fire right away, Harry? And if they had known about these terrorists or knew of them, was there a breakdown in communications within, or did they not know enough about these shooters?
Yeah, that baffles me. You're there to serve and protect. So, as a first responder, they should have engaged, and they should have been taken out a lot earlier. Now, my concern is that there's a driver's license going around, and something to do with potentially that they were part of a shooting club or something like that. Maybe that's where the firearms may have come from. But my question, and this is what I can't work out, there's information there from ASIO and the police that they're known. So if they're known and they're a threat, why were those licenses not dealt with and rescinded? So that's something that needs to be looked into for a starter. So and I think it was about 10 or 11 minutes before the police actually engaged, and they may have been tactical police that got there. So yeah, there was photos of police standing around and whatever. So yeah, I can't answer that. I think obviously the officers, there'll be a coronial inquiry and whatever. The police will have to answer as to what responses were and weren't made. So yeah, it's very baffling to me that you're there to do a job. Unfortunately, there's times where your life's you go to work and you don't know whether you're going to come home that by the end of the shift, because you know that something could always happen. So I don't know why, and that should be in their training to actually first thing is to protect the public. And where they were actually quite out in the open and easy targets, even though they had the high ground so they could shoot down, but also where they were exposed, so they were relatively easy targets to try and take out and pick off. And you'd be going for centre of mass. In this instance, that you wouldn't be going. And they've got Glocks and they can reload. So I'll just forget off the top of my head. So they could have let off quite a few rounds. Yeah. So as we saw, that member of the public who was just walking by actually took it upon himself to disarm one of the shooters. But then he was able to go back up, and obviously he was shot. The public individual was shot, so obviously couldn't take any further action. And then that shooter was able to go back up on the bridge. And obviously, he had with the bag that he had more. He had another gun in there, so he had more firearms, and then continued shooting. So yeah, and there was a lot of footage. And this is my point, where what we see in America, where they've got a First Amendment protecting their speech, and they've got a Second Amendment where they've got the right to bear arms. If you look at the FDA.gov statistics, all the shootings happen in gun-free zones. In Texas, all the states that have guns, when these sort of things happen, the shooters are taken out very quickly by members of the public because police can't be there. The police were there, and it's very baffling why they didn't take action. That's all I can say. That's one thing that will definitely need to be, they'll need to be held to account, and just answer as to why they, didn't actually engage.
Yeah, it does seem very, very odd. And they were targeting them. And I was looking at other, are they just shooting into the crowd? They were shooting just into the crowd, but these people were at a celebration, and they could have killed anybody. They would, it's just started to fire. Shalini, I'm just wondering your views on that. Was there some sort of radicalism involved here?
Sorry, say that again.
Was there some sort of radicalism involved that incited a father and a son to go out and kill people?
Well, it definitely points to that. We've got enough historical evidence, and radicalization in Islam is not something which is not known to the world. It has been there for a very long time. Terrorist attacks are common. This year itself, we've seen the Pahalgam attack in the Kashmir region of India, which was a gruesome attack on the local Hindu population, and it was driven by ethnic hatred agenda. So definitely there are elements, things point to that. We hope is not the case in Australia. We hope our communities have not reached to that extent, but that fear always stays in the mind when you look at the world around as to what has happened with the Pahalgam attack, or even the recent, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen Delhi blasts, and it's been well established that those Delhi blasts were actually were the brainchild of radical Islamists, which were actually citizens of India, and basically even a large number of medical professionals were involved in those Delhi blasts. So we are seeing examples overseas of increased radicalization, a kind of a hatred towards non-believers, and not just the Jews. Jews have been, Israel and Palestine has been the center of news for the last 2 years, but the hatred towards non-Jews, towards non-believers goes beyond just Jews. We've got historical evidence of massacres, genocides. 1991 Kashmir genocide is a great, study in time, which tells how a generation gets brainwashed and then turns against the communities. So we hope this is not that, but as analysts, as observers, we cannot say that there is not elements of that we are seeing right now. But it is something which has to be factored into, sadly, in the analysis of the safety and security of Australia at large. As Pauline Hanson has said many times, we need to factor that into our immigration policy as well. But these are the tough questions we as generations need to answer. There is no written evidence to anything, but we have to keep our eyes and ears open. The trust within the community has definitely been breached, and that will take a very, very long time to heal.
Bernie, the level of hatred, and it's I think you said before, it's quite contagious, isn't it? We have the protest for to stop the genocide or bombing or killing of innocent people in Gaza, and it became almost like a cult, like a fanaticism, which just morphs into pure hatred for fellow human being, and reverse that, the level of hatred from the Jewish community, more so from within Israel than here. And I think they have a terrible government. I don't wish to be outrageous by any stretch, but the Israeli government is terrible. Having said that, the Jewish people in Australia are a magnificent part of our heritage. And I've worked with them. My wife has worked in the clothing industry all her life, and they're just like you and I. But the level of hatred that's now been imported from these places, such as the Middle East, I would probably say mostly, can we rescind that level of hatred, or will it just morph into something even worse? And I fear that this is not going to be the last time this will happen. You'll have revenge killings, and then they'll have revenge killings. It's got nothing to do with religion at all, has it?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. When we look at any community, whether it's a civil community or religious community, there's always going to be a spectrum. And so you'll get from, like within the Muslim community, we currently have 6 Muslims sharing our house at the moment, my wife and I. They're refugees that have come from different countries looking for somewhere to live, so they've moved in with us. And we would see them as people, but there would be others within the Muslim community, and these are lovely people who are living with us, but there are others within the Muslim community like Naveed Akram and his father who'd be filled with hatred. And that hatred has been fed by an ideology, and that ideology has come from a religious base. It's, I mentioned before the ISIS flag, and some Muslims will say, well, look, ISIS has got nothing to do with Islam. Well, it does. It stands for the Islamic State in Syria, and it comes out of the teachings that we find in the Quran, in the Hadith, in Islamic theology over the centuries, this idea of establishing this universal Islamic caliphate, and also the way in which they would see other people, and Shelley mentioned the unbelievers see them as less than human. So that kind of ideology feeds certain behaviour, and that comes out of a religious base. I thought it's no good saying, well, I've got nothing to do with religion, with Islam. It's like saying St Vincent de Paul or Salvation Army have got nothing to do with Christianity. These things come out of a particular understanding of the world and the way that they're put into practice. And I think the key is to say, well, okay, there are some aspects of a religious ideology which are not acceptable in this country, and you should not, you cannot practice them here. You can be a Muslim who says your prayers, reads the Quran, fulfills your religious duties, but when it moves into the needle moves into that area of engaging in violent jihad activities for the purpose of establishing an Islamic state, then we'd say that's a bridge too far and we won't tolerate that. So I think that's an important thing to recognise, that there is a religious element to it. It's not just social or political.
Can I ask you, Bernie, in Christian religion we have the Bible, thou shalt not kill. Can you tell me, is there something, this is just for my own information here, within, say, Islam and within the Jewish religion, is there a similar rule there, or request, or stipulation that thou shalt not kill? Is that part of the other religions, or is there a slight twisting of the words? And I have no idea. So this is just a bit of education for myself and many others, because it doesn't make any sense. None of this makes any sense.
Yeah. Of course, that phrase, thou shalt not kill, comes out of the 10 Commandments, which is in the Old Testament. So it's something which is, and the word actually means to murder. It's not as though there's no place for fighting in war or executing criminals or something, and both of those were practiced in the Old Testament. And interestingly, when Jesus came, he interpreted that in a very kind of pacifist, way in that he refused to take up arms, although he could if he had the people behind him, refused to take up arms against the Romans and to drive them out. And he actually, rather than seeking to save his own life, he gave it up for others. So he died when he died on the cross. That was a kind of a self-giving, a sacrifice for other people. So you've got these two different kind of approaches that you'll find within the Bible. But when you come to the Quran, it very much kind of reverts to the Jewish understanding where it says you shall not kill. That verse is also in the Quran. But the stipulations of who you can kill and when you can kill are quite different. And so there's a verse in the Quran, it's called the Surah As-Sayf, that the verse of the sword, Surah 927, it says, kill the unbelievers wherever you find them. And this kind of verse has been picked up by ISIS and Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda. And for them, that then becomes a holy duty. So the idea of killing people who have a different religion to you is something that is considered to be acceptable. Now, most Muslims don't carry that verse out, and I hope our 6 house guests don't decide to do that on us, because they recognise these verses come in a context, that every verse needs to be interpreted according to the context. And for them, they would say, this was a time when there was a war going on, and so in a war, you go and kill the enemy, and this is how that verse was understood. But there's, so it's this real recognition that within the spectrum of the Islamic community, there would be different understandings of how the scriptures are to be understood and carried out.
Harry, I'm going to throw something at you here. We've had not many times, but a bunch of times here at the Protagonists on the World Today, we've talked about the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood, their job is they're very highly organised. If you look at the Pakistani grooming gangs in the UK, highly connected with all that, the part of it, they are it. Not a nice bunch of people. And then they are, but I said highly organised, and they're trained well. They know how to disrupt, and probably they can destroy not cultures, but groups or small groups of people within a particular civilization. So if you wanted to disrupt and disrupt a culture or the way of life, what you would do is do what happened. For example, yesterday, or even at the couple of years ago, within Bondi, and you kill people. And so therefore, when you think of Bondi, instead of thinking about Australia, because people overseas think of the Sydney Harbour Bridge and then Bondi Beach and all those tan bodies, which you and I never were. But if you wanted to destroy that iconic tradition or part of Australia, and that's what the Muslim Brotherhood do, this would be a perfect scenario, wouldn't it? Because sure, they have been, one was killed, one's in hospital, and he'll be locked away forever and a day, if he ever lives that long. But the idea of destroying a particular culture is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. And no one talks about it. You don't talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, but it is part of it. And they are, and I was looking at and I said last night when this happened, I was talking to some people, and I mentioned that they're Pakistani because of the names. Now, nothing against Pakistanis, but that is part of the, I suppose, entrenchment of the Muslim Brotherhood. So if we have that, and that they know that the Muslim Brotherhood and ASIO and all of our secret service organisations would know that, I don't understand how they could do this, because the Muslim Brotherhood, they're just waiting. They're just waiting to do some shit. And this is what I think has happened. I think it was the Muslim Brotherhood in some way that have decided that they're going to create all sorts of garbage. And if you look at all the bits and pieces that are sort of tying themselves in together at the moment, you would say that this is a possibility. I'm not saying I'm totally convinced, but there is the connections. So, Harry, do you know much about the Muslim Brotherhood? And if if it is possible that these were the Muslim part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they had a plan to disrupt Australia and start destroying a culture within, and they knew it was going to play on the hatred and blah blah, the whole thing would escalate. Why didn't the Australian Federal Police, the State Police, ASIO, and all those have some sort of clue? And I still don't understand why the lack of retaliation immediately when these murderers, these mongrels, were killing innocent people.
Yeah, look, the radicalisation of individuals in Australia has been an ongoing problem. Going back to what Bernie said, I can't go into specifics, but I joined the AFP in '83, and in the '90s, after 9/11, there were quite a few threats coming down to specific events. I won't go into the actual specific events. So I don't want to give these individuals any ideas. I'm sure they've got plenty of their own, but we were on top of it. We were surveilling them, and those threats were taken seriously. And mind you, we didn't have a lot of resources, and the technology we had back then is not the technology to trace and track with phones and so what we've got now. So I agree with you there. What are the what are the intelligence agencies, ASIO, and what are the terrorist units in the AFP and in the New South Wales Police doing? Secondly, we're part of Five Eyes now. I follow geopolitics and the international events very closely, especially to do with in this particular area. Now, General Flynn, who was in the first Trump administration and is not in the current administration, but is advising them very closely, and is probably the world expert on this terrorist and intelligence issues, came out about a month ago and said that there's going to be attacks within the next month to 2-3 months in the West from Muslim Brotherhood and other areas to do with what's been going on. So we're part of Five Eyes, so I'm quite sure that the Australian intelligence agents would have access to this information. We've got Pine Gap. So, yeah, that's my question as well. What are the authorities doing? Now, we've had people preaching for decades now, preaching hate and whatever, and there seems to be no action being taken. This is Australia. Like I said, if you come here, bring your culture, bring everything with you, but where it's but leave the hate and that behind. If you want to do that, go back to your country. You left your country for a reason. It wasn't a particularly great place, and you've come here for a better life. So you should, and if you've taken citizenship or you're born here, you should take on board the rights and the privileges that being an Australian citizen or being born here and being in the lucky country as it used to be known. Yeah, so that's a very good question, and it needs answered. What are the intelligence agencies doing? We're spending all this money, but they're very quick to label it the terrorism as if they knew it was coming and it was happening, and off we go to the races. We can expect more legislation to take our freedoms away. I don't know what they're going to do with guns, because they've already did that back with the Port Arthur massacre. So, yeah, this is going deeper and deeper into a bit of a dystopian society, but with no actual solutions. Labor or Liberal, all the Greens have got no answers. And we need, yeah.
So I think it's terrible, and I do agree with you, Harry. I think the level of tension within a country that was once she'll be right, mate, which used to drive me nuts, by the way, but she'll be right, mate, let's go and have a beer. That was what made the Australian laid-back culture so appealing to the rest of the world. And now we have, and I see the Albanese has been under attack by the media and others. So should the others. I mean, I don't see any difference with the opposition. I see most of the other parties, they all hide. Oh, we can't be seen, castigating one group and supporting another one, and then a bit later on saying, no, you can't do that either. I don't see that. I don't see the standing up for Australia virtues at all, Harry. And I think, I think, as much as I hate to say it, I think the Australian culture, what it used to be, if you look at all the tension that's out there at the moment, or all the rules and regulations, whether it's surveillance, climate crap, all that sort of stuff, it's meant to put us in our place. And no matter what we say, what we want, they are not going to take any notice of it. And they'll get on the pedestal and say, we're looking after Australians. They're not. But
No.
the government is no different, though, than the other politicians. And then we have the media, the Murdoch media, or the media. They are just appalling. And then we have the independent media on there, they're going to create all this trouble and stress. Where have we gone wrong, Harry? Why can't we get this shit right?
Yeah, look, yeah, she'll be right, mate. Unfortunately, it's my new slogan is nothing's right, mate. And people need to wake up and start realising what's being done. The culture, the Australian culture, the Australian way of life has been decimated, has been diluted, and unfortunately, we've had people coming in to this country. The same thing's happened in America, in the UK. It's happened all over Europe. That unfortunately do not assimilate with or do not have the same core values that we have, and then there's people that have been radicalised, and unfortunately, we've got a problem with the Middle East. The Middle East has been targeted for war by and we've got a lot of displacement, and it's fed all this disgruntled people and that have had relatives killed and whatever, and it's just festered this hate, and it's just festering and festering and festering, and honestly, I don't know how we fix it. It's just gotten to the point where it's not left or right. It's whatever. It's just pure evil. It's evil. It's turned into evil. It's good against evil, and unfortunately, people just don't understand what's going on. And we've got fear and propaganda being propagated, and we've got governments for decades have been trying to pander to all sides and to everyone, and you can't be that. It's Australia first, and you've got to maintain our core values, and we need to maintain the society that we've had, that our predecessors grew up in and actually were guardians of, and we need to do the same, and we need to do the same for our children and for the future generations. But unfortunately, the world that we're going into and the Australia that we're going into is not a very nice place unless we do something and turn this around. And all the posturing and pandering and whatever big talk from politicians, I mean, it doesn't cut it. It's just words. It doesn't. By their deeds you shall know them, right? So you watch what they say and what they're doing. They're actually doing the opposite. I don't think Albo's done one thing that he said he was going to do. I mean, the other side aren't any better, this problem has just become so big that unfortunately it's going to have to end up sorting itself out. And I don't know what it's going to take for people to actually realise how bad the situation is, and to start taking notice and start asking their politicians to start doing something about it. That what they're doing is not good enough, because all they care about is the next election. You only hear from them at the next election. They want your vote, then you don't hear from them again. And unfortunately, they're passing legislation after legislation, reams of it, without the people knowing what's being done to them. And that's part of the problem as well.
Shalini, I can see the possibility, and God willing it won't happen, but I can see a possibility of revenge because of the immense hatred. How do we dumb this thing down? How do we start looking at it without the emotion, except for those that have been killed and the families that have been destroyed? How do we do that? Because whether it's someone from the Muslim community, or from the Jewish community, or from the Chinese community, from the Bangladeshi community, Indian, we are all Australian. So how do we dumb this down and get back to being what we should be as humans? Because I don't know, and I don't know if we can do that. What would you say?
So there are two things over here. One is we are dealing with terrorism, and terrorism has to be dealt with force. That's the only way a nation can counter it. So when we identify anything as terrorism, there are many, many layers to it, more than what's visible on the face of it. So I think the authorities need to have that spine of steel and deal with it with as much strictness as they possibly can. Even if it means, banning some organizations such as Muslim Brotherhood, just the way Americans have done it under the Trump administration, or for that reason, any other terrorist organization which has its presence directly, indirectly through its diaspora or through not-for-profit organizations within Australia, that decision has to be taken firmly. There should be no leniency to that. Absolute no leniency. But when it comes to social cohesion, when it comes to looking 50 years, 60 years, 100 years of the life going ahead as a nation, as a society, there is a lot of education work that needs to be done, which means the communities, rather than being in isolation, needs to be brought in together. So this whole Marxist way of seeing the society as race, religion, differences, and using them as political, vote banks, that mindset has to go. That socialist Marxist mindset has to go. You cannot mess with the sovereignty of the country. You cannot mess with the identity of the country for the sake of your bloody vote banks. You can't do that. So there's a lot of education work that needs to be done, and I hope we had some leaders in this country who would be voicing that. I just don't see enough leaders. So I think at a grassroots level, we really need to start possibly some sort of a grassroots movement wherein we'll see some leaders from our neighborhood, who would start to educate and unite together. And I'm very much with Harry on the point of, empowering the citizens with, self-defense. Not so much in terms of, giving them guns. I'm not in favor of that, but with self-defense. So I think we need to bring in self-discipline, self-defense, a unified identity, and for that there needs a ground level. There has to be a will of the political. There has to be a political will for that. What we've seen is they've given out these grants just for the sake of giving out grants. We don't even, and we can definitely say with confidence, none of these social cohesion grants or payment of millions of dollars to these envoys to write these fancy reports and recommendations will ever make an iota of difference to the unity of the country. So these two are aspects. That's where I would say, if I was to be, if I have to give my piece of advice.
There's much we haven't discussed. We have just about run out of time, so I'm going to go to Bernie. Where to from here, Bernie? What two things? And you've got a minute and a half to do this. Where to from here? Are we going to be able to wind this back, or do you see something more sinister in the making?
Yeah. One feature of this was when Mike Burgess mentioned, the head of ASIO mentioned, we interviewed this man before. So that was back in 2019. Naveed Akram had been spending time with a guy called Isaac El Matari, a guy who just come to Australia, having been imprisoned in Lebanon for 8 months for wanting to start an ISIS cell there. He came to Australia and then he gets put into prison here in Australia. And the Australian government knew that this guy Naveed was a person of interest because of the close contact. But I think political correctness was what stopped them from pushing that to the end. So they kind of pulled off and left him go, and they had lots of other things to keep them busy. But this concept of political correctness, of being unwilling for people to call out something for what it is and to say, this is an evil ideology, we need to fight against it, we can't just tolerate this. That's the call that governments need to make, and as a community we need to make too. I do a diagram with my students to say we're all on the top of a slippery slope. Once you start respecting other people, which is a good thing, in time that will just you'll go down to the point where you accept all things, and then ultimately you find yourself in this position where you're unwilling to criticise anything, and that's been our big mistake. We need to, as the others have said, just keep our focus on it and say there are behaviours and attitudes and ideologies which are acceptable in our culture, and there are others that are not. And often I meet radical Muslims and I'd say, look, there's 50 other countries around the world that would welcome your ideology. This isn't one of them. Please go to one of those countries. We don't want it here. And I think we need to kind of stand up very strongly and say, this is what we believe, this is the way that we're going to act.
Yeah, I think an Australian saying would be bugger off. that's what Aussies say, and I think we need to. I don't know what we need to do. I'm stumped. But my guests have been just very, very good indeed. Dr. Bernie Power from the Melbourne School of Theology, Shalini Barsin from the Brisbane Eastside branch of the Libertarians, and Harry Hatzakilamenos, a retired detective and speaks a lot of sense. Thank you very much for everything. I appreciate it. This has been The Protagonists. We've got part 2 coming up, all about President Trump and Fortress America, right here on The World Today.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. 12 people, including children, were killed and up to 29 injured when 2 gunmen opened fire at Sydney's Bondi Beach during the Hanukah festival, Hanukah by the Sea. One attacker, 24-year-old Navita Kram of Bonnyrigg, was shot and arrested. The second gunman was killed. Authorities confirmed the attack was an act of terrorism targeting Jewish Australians. An improvised explosive device was found and removed. Witnesses described chaos as people fled or hid. Israeli officials criticized Australia for ignoring warnings about rising anti-Semitism. ASIO said the terrorism threat level remains probable, though no further attacks are currently indicated.
This afternoon, there has been a devastating terrorist incident at Bondi at the Hanukah by the Sea celebration. This is a targeted attack on Jewish Australians on the first day of Hanukah, which should be a day of joy, a celebration of faith. An act of evil anti-Semitism, terrorism, that has struck the heart of our nation. An attack on Jewish Australians is an attack on every Australian, and every Australian tonight will be, like me, devastated.
Police detained a person of interest after a shooting at Brown University's engineering building killed 2 people and wounded 9. Surveillance footage showed an unidentified individual dressed in black walking from the scene. 7 victims are in stable condition, 1 remains critical, and 1 was discharged. The campus shelter-in-place order was lifted, though crime scene restrictions remain. University leaders canceled all remaining fall semester classes and exams, citing trauma and safety concerns, and assured students of ongoing support. Providence Mayor Brett Smiley thanked the FBI for rapid assistance. Authorities expect to release additional details as evidence collection and interviews continue. German police arrested 5 men, 3 Moroccans, 1 Syrian, and 1 Egyptian, over an alleged Islamist plot to attack a Christmas market in Dingolfing, Bavaria. Authorities say the Egyptian suspect, believed to be a mosque prayer leader, recruited the others for a vehicle attack, while the Syrian encouraged the plot. Bavarian officials praised a rapid, coordinated response among intelligence and police agencies, saying the arrest likely prevented an imminent attack. The case comes amid heightened fears across Germany, where multiple Christmas markets have been canceled due to high security costs and past Islamist attacks on such events. The European Union is reportedly abandoning its planned ban on combustion engines by 2035 after major resistance from Germany, Italy, Poland, and the Czech Republic. According to EPP leader Manfred Weber, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has agreed to replace the ban with a 90% emissions reduction target, meaning current engines can continue to be produced and sold. Weber and industry leaders say the shift preserves climate goals while protecting technological neutrality and industrial jobs. The compromise still requires formal approval. German and Italian leaders argue that an outright ban would devastate automotive manufacturing. Top Israeli officials criticize Australia's left-leaning government for failing to confront rising anti-Semitism before a terrorist attack at a Hanukah event in Sydney's Bondi Beach, where multiple gunmen killed at least 11 and injured 29, including a rabbi, police officer, and an Israeli citizen. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage.
Desperately sorry for the Jewish community in Sydney, which is quite considerable, but equally, you realise actually the threat to the Jewish people is everywhere. It's not just in Manchester or in parts of North London, it's all over the world. And there is this real poison.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
There is a problem with medicine, and we can explain what it is by looking back to the discovery of penicillin. Penicillin, it turns out, was not just an accidental finding. Alexander Fleming discovered that mold he found in a culture dish was killing bacteria, but it took over 10 years before a team at Oxford University were able to isolate the active ingredient. They produced small quantities for preclinical and clinical trials, helping prove the compound was safe and could beat infection. However, they couldn't produce it at scale. In 1941, Andrew Jackson Moyer of the US Department of Agriculture, the forerunner to the FDA, suggested changes to the manufacturing process, enabling mass production. It turns out medicines are not invented when someone discovers a new molecular entity. They are the product of key stakeholders working together collaboratively. Until medicine can be manufactured at scale, it may as well not exist. And in 2025, this is a problem. In the 1980s, pharmaceutical companies began outsourcing production. Suddenly the system was significantly less integrated. Someone with a new discovery today will find themselves disconnected from the rest of the development and manufacturing process. Companies that develop medicine are still happy to work with big established pharma companies, but the modern day Flemings are cut out of the system. The result is far fewer new medicines coming to market. We want to fix this by ensuring the pharma industry builds a more integrated supply chain. We also believe that doctors' expertise administering medicine should be included at the beginning of the process. We know that doctors on the front line have insights about how to repurpose medicine. Doctors should be able to report their findings so that the necessary testing can be completed and they can share their results worldwide. Learn more here and help us take medicines back to the future.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome to the Protagonists here at The World Today, Part 2. Are we witnessing a new Fortress America? I would think so. We're going to discuss with our guest, Trevor Colt, shortly, and Robbie Barwick. We're hoping the John Mayer can pop in and have a word too. It's likely that Australians, New Zealanders and citizens of over 40 other visa-exempt countries must disclose 5 years' worth of social media history to visit the US. A new plan would bring the rules for citizens of those countries in line with those for tourist visa applicants, who have been required to provide social media data since 2019. We must know all about you. Are you saying bad things against me? That's Mr. Trump's mind, maybe. Other requirements will include biometrics such as iris, face, DNA and fingerprints, personal and business phone numbers for the past 5 years, personal and business email addresses for the past 10 years, IP addresses and metadata, family members' names and phone numbers for the past 5 years, addresses, dates and place of birth, and so on. The proposal is open for public comment until early January. But don't put it on your social media, for goodness sake. On the other hand, though, the US is prioritising groups that will make America great with the launch of a new program that will allow wealthy foreign individuals to buy a US golden visa. It's yours for only $1 million and a platinum visa for only $5 million. And you can have a cup of tea with me. That's Donald Trump thinking, by the way. Actually, I could be wrong. Some say, does he actually do that? The Gold Card program has already faced heavy criticism by seemingly contradicting the US's traditional reputation as a refuge for the hard-working poor. Hiring new talent from abroad will cost US employers hefty fines under new provisions to the H-1B visa. Amid the push for American companies to hire American workers, Donald Trump has raised a big, beautiful application fee for H-1B visas from $1,700 to $4,500, and it gets better, to $100,000. Time will tell how these rules, working in conjunction with Trump's tariff policy, will affect the American economy. Will the tourism sector feel the heat of restrictions on visitors? Will the US no longer attract the talent it did from other countries? Either way, can America continue to be regarded as the home of the free? Over-the-top surveillance is quickly being implemented as an antidote to waves of illegal migration, and now all Americans and law-abiding visitors are considered guilty until found innocent, or unless you're fabulously rich. And then do we have a big, beautiful deal for you? Our panel today, they're wide and varied, to say the least. Robbie Barwick from the Australian Citizens Party. We have John Mayer, journalist and broadcaster. He's back again. And Trevor Colt, MC, a decorated British soldier and a podcaster of some great note. Gentlemen, and I don't use that word loosely, thanks for joining me.
All right, welcome.
Right. And Robbie, what's your views on Fortress America and these new? I mean, because you can have put your opinion forward and tell them what you think of it. I see two problems. One, they're not going to take any notice. But if you put your opinion or what you think of these new rules and regulations on your social media and it goes through, what do you think they'll think about you as you pop into, you land off the plane weary-eyed at LAX, and they say, "Oh, Mr. Barwick, I see that you're criticising the king of the universe." What do you think will happen?
Well, I dare say I'm not going to America again while these rules are in place. I think I've gone to America about a dozen times in between 93 and 2013 was the last time I was there. And actually, I remember the first time was a great experience. America, as an 18-year-old, I'd grown up with this idea, a world in which America was the place to be, that America was the standard setter. So I was very excited to go there that year. I must say, by the time I last visited in 2013, even though I visited a city that is probably, in my view, the most beautiful city there, San Francisco, I was overwhelmed with homeless people on every corner. Half of them were military vets holding out their veterans cards. And I was glad to not go back. And now this news is broken. And after I've been on social media all that time, especially on Twitter, they'll find plenty of criticism from me of the United States. And ironically, Mike, I just recently had my first visit to China, the autocratic authoritarian China, and it was a breeze to enter. China is making it easier for people to visit. They offer 30-day visa-free visits to 80 countries, including Australia, and they don't ask for your social media. So it was easy in, easy out, and who would have thought in 2025 China would be the place that's easy to get into, and America would be putting up these barriers in the form of this social media stuff. Final thought: I think you're really seeing how, and I suspect there's an intention here. I can't cite chapter and verse, but I think you're seeing how social media is being used for surveillance and was probably always intended to be used for surveillance. The marriage of the American state and this technocratic Silicon Valley state, there's aspects of it that are really, really ominous, and this is one manifestation.
I've got to ask John Mayer, will you be taking any trips to the US in your first class suite, of course? You still fly with the commoners, but you're at the pointy end, I would imagine. But
I turn right, I don't turn left.
oh, that's terrible for you, John. You're much too important not to turn left. But do you see this would be a retardant to those wanting to visit the US? Because, I mean, we all say things on our socials that are meant for your group of friends. If they can go right back 5 years, or you have to find all that information from the last 5 years, you could be in a spot of bother. I'm not saying you, but the general public could be in a spot of bother.
Look, Mike, I've got a sister who lives in Louisiana and has done for 50 years, who has a green card, but has never properly worked in America, and she has a house in London, and she's afraid of leaving America because she doesn't think she might get back in. Now, what sort of country is that? Why don't they deport Donald Trump back to Germany and to Scotland, which is where he's from?
Last time
put him on a boat.
Last time you wanted him shipped out also. I mean, at least you're still consistent. But what do you think, John, what do you think? And I'll give you an example. In Hawaii, for example, they rely on the Japanese and the Australians, much to their horror, because it used to be a favourite destination. Hawaii is going through a terrible, terrible time. And it's almost the epicenter along with Vegas. And both are suffering because of the economy in a downturn. And now for this to happen, it's going to affect, John, isn't it? It's going to affect not only visitors going into the US, it's going to affect those that rely on those numbers to support their income.
Like Donald Trump's effect on the world and on America is astonishing, and it will take us decades to recover from it. This is the land of the free. This is a land built on immigration. I'll repeat that. This is a land built on immigrants. So, who does Trump think he is? I mean, he's German and Scottish. He's not American. He's one of the two. So he's only second generation anyway. Look, somebody ought to say to Donald Trump, look, Donald, this is stupid. You're being given very stupid advice. Go and find some other advisors.
Look, I'm going to delete that comment, by the way, if I have to go through, because they're going to go, John Mayer. Trevor Court, MC, decorated British Army veteran and podcaster of some ill repute. I always get your notifications. What do you think about this? If you were to go to the US, and you're a decorated British Army veteran, but your podcasts aren't all that sanitised, are they?
Well, Mike, let's be honest. I wouldn't be allowed in, would I? For a start, I wouldn't want to go to America right now, if I'm honest. It's got beautiful stuff there. We all think it's amazing, but countries change due to leadership roles. Now, there's a lot of things that Trump does that I like. There's a lot of things that he does that I don't like. I can't say that I hate him, but I can't say I love him either. And I don't want to come across as someone that's sitting on the fence, because I don't. I've just been reading yesterday, though, that now this is alleged, that he's brought the US deficit down to half. Apparently, $600 billion has been saved. So as far as an American is concerned, Donald Trump is doing well for America. Now, when it comes to migration, every country was built on migration. Let's get that straight. We all needed people to help us out. Now, when it comes to digital ID and ID, you mentioned that iris scans, finger swabs, there's also mouth swabs. That's been going for about 30, 40 years, because I used to use those type of machines to enroll people biometrically to find out who they were associated with. So we have that for quite some time. So that's nothing new. As far as social media is concerned, that's a scare tactic. If anything, if somebody was to look at Donald Trump's social media, I think they probably wouldn't let him in either. Some of the things that he says, some of the things that Elon Musk says is unhinged. They all do clickbait. That's what they're. Donald likes to shock people, right? But it's something that he wouldn't be able to enforce. Social media has got that big now that if you were to troll through everyone's social media, no one would be allowed in America. That's a fact. So you mentioned earlier on about I believe in a message about the Fortress America. I agree that he's trying to do that. It's quite obvious that Donald Trump is trying to isolate the US from the rest of the globe with his policies and what he's putting into place. And the way things are going today, and the way things are going with religion, and the way things are going with innocent people, maybe it's time that we all isolated our own countries. You're okay. You're in Australia. No one's coming to you in a canoe, are they? But the world's a dangerous place. People like Donald Trump, if I'm honest, have good ideas and have atrocious ideas which isolate them. It's not helping America, in my opinion.
Just as a side note here, when I went to Hawaii last year, no, was it last year? Yeah, last year. How time flies when you're having fun. And we, my wife and I fronted up to the INS guy, and he looked at mine and said, "You're fine," and then looked at my wife's. And I said, why are you looking at my wife's and not me? He says, "Your wife looks more dangerous." And I thought, well, someone who's being really, really funny. And she does, by the way. She does look much more dangerous. I'm just a placid sort of guy. Robbie, Trump has been a vocal critic of the US and EU cracking down on free speech. So he says that the EU is just bad. But the US is, in its own way now, is cracking down on just about everything. This sort of smacks of hypocrisy, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. But bear in mind what they call the EU cracking down on free speech is restrictions on American social media platforms. And America is the exceptional country, and they just say, no, these kind of laws don't apply to us. It's not really a free speech position. I'm someone who's very concerned about what's been going on in Gaza for 2 years. And under the whole Trump administration, there's been no free speech in the United States in relation to Gaza. You can't have a proper discussion about it in America. So there's just it's the whole free speech discussion is all for show. I do think Trevor makes a good point, though. There is an element of this particular policy that you do wonder if it's just scare tactics, because how do you administer such a policy? The only way they could do it practically is to apply some kind of AI search engine to dig through your social media, because you can't employ bureaucrats to go through everyone's social media back to 5 years. I can't go through my social media back 5 years. How the hell are you supposed to do this? I go looking for precious gems that I've posted in the past, thinking that was the greatest post ever, and can I find it? No way. And then if AI does it, it's going to be a very blunt instrument, and it's just going to have the effect of frightening people off. You're not going to get. I don't think in practice it's going to be that workable.
Mike, let's talk about what Trump and Vance mean by free speech. You've got Vance coming to Europe and lecturing us on free speech. Look, I ain't taking any lectures from Vance and Trump on free speech. This is a country that since Magna Carta has free speech. We can say what we like as long as it's not illegal. So please don't tell us what free speech is, Donald. Stick to something you know about.
But John, though, here we go. This has been an exciting time for me. The UK is probably a very poor example of free speech.
Probably not a poor example. No, it's not. Absolutely not. We tolerate Nigel Farage and all of his foibles. We tolerate lots of. We don't tolerate Tommy Robinson because he's illegal. Come on. Of course, you got free speech in this country. It's a nonsense to talk about two-tiered justice and all the rest of it.
Okay, John, this is where we need to be. We have, for example, I'm just getting to that point. Last year, the UK police, according to the stats, there was a 90% lack of solving of crimes, and 10%, of course,
they're useless. That's nothing to do with free speech. That's to do with them being useless.
John. So, but what they did do, because that's my next part here, and then you can say something. What they did do, though, they went and arrested 13,000 Brits for saying hurty words on social media. And one of our guests, or a lot of our guests, would verify that, because they were invited down to to the police station, such as Harry Miller and a bunch of other guys. And I'm going to swing to Trevor, but I just want your thoughts on that first, John, and then Trevor, you can pop in when you feel like it.
Free speech has not been illegal, though. Come on, you know. They haven't. People not been arrested for nothing. They've been arrested for threats and racism and various other things, which is fine.
Trevor?
I got arrested for mentioning Bajabaki in January 2024. Basically, I was doing a podcast and I had returned from Afghanistan, John. I've spent 3 years there. And I was discussing about Afghan men arriving by their thousands. And I mentioned about a certain activity which takes place in Afghanistan on a Thursday night called Bajabaki, where the Afghan men put makeup on the boys and nasty things happen to young kids. And I was mentioning that on my podcast when Suffolk police knocked on my door and arrested me. Apparently that's a hate crime to discuss things which happen in Afghanistan. So I have first-hand experience of discussing things and having the police knock on the door. So when you invite a lot of individuals from different cultures into your country which don't understand your culture and they bring their culture, part of their culture is grooming children. And if you mention that on social media, then that becomes a hate crime as far as UK's law is concerned. So there is a little bit of a curb on freedom of speech, and I've faced it myself, John.
Trevor, hang on. The government inquiry into grooming gangs has been a long-running government inquiry into that. You know, so
Stop.
you know,
Stop.
and so
the choir has met resistance from moving forward. I think Trevor would agree there.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's never been a time before where when I go on and I do different things, you sort of have to, and I think you all kind of agree, you sort of have to police what your answers are going to be in case you do step over the line. And stepping over the line now has become a problem when it comes to broadcasting and doing things. You have to make sure that you say things politically correct now, because the thing is, intelligent people aren't offended. There's a lot of retards watch TV and you are offending them. So you're having to quieten down your knowledge. You're having to dim down your knowledge to suit the people that are uneducated in case they complain about what you've said to them.
Look,
hang on a minute. I would never call somebody who watches TV a retard unless they watch GB News.
Well, I'd probably say that.
Well, it depends, John, who's watching. But we have a lot of today sort of a lot of people today refuse to sort of educate themselves on our past and what we've done and wars and religion and all different things. Now, religion causes a lot of issues. It also fixes a lot of things. So I don't want to go down that road with it. But for some reason today, I'll explain that to John. A lot of people get offended today just because they don't like what they hear, though, and then they complain to the police, and it takes the police away from doing ordinary crimes and trying to solve things. And the police, now I know a lot of guys in the police, they're saturated with nonsense coming down from higher, rather than getting out on the ground and doing proper job. And it's not their fault. It's coming from the head sheds at the top.
Let's go back to basics. What does free speech mean? Does it mean shouting fire in a crowded theatre? Does it mean being racist? Does it mean being sexist? No, it doesn't. You know.
Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to a different topic, John, and I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we're going to stick to this one. I just want to ask Robbie, when you went to China, and you can put me straight here, we often believe that China is one of the great surveilled countries of the world, that they know if whatever you do, they will know. And you're a supporter of China, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And you're quite critical of the US. Is China a greatly surveilled state? And if that's the case, if they are, and I believe they are, surely then your liberties, because they knew that you were there for however long, up to 30 days, surely your liberties, providing you didn't do too much, so they're going to let you do what you want to do. It's those that live within China that enjoy the true benefits of this surveillance state, and I'm being facetious. There is no benefits to a surveilled state, especially if they know what you do, where you do, and all that sort of stuff, and then they will implement their their methods of coercion, how to see the light?
Well, let me begin by mentioning a great Australian actor named Eric Bana, who made a British movie called Closed Circuit. Excellent movie. And the reason they made that movie was because in those days, it was a fact, in the era of Tony Blair, London had the most closed circuit TVs per capita of any country, of any city on earth. Britain invented this surveillance state. China comes along and perfects things. So here's my experience in China. So like I said, I wasn't asked for social media. I had to give my fingerprints, but you've got to do that in dozens of countries around the world now when you visit, including America and Australia. You've got to give your fingerprints. That's the only thing I had to do. You do see a lot of cameras on the streets looking at the traffic. That's certainly true. There's plenty of cameras there looking at the traffic. But the traffic didn't seem to mind. I haven't really travelled much in Asia before, and so the thing that jumped out at me was all these electric scooters, moped, like Vespa type motorbikes, and there were millions of them. And there must be hundreds of millions of these things in China, and it's like the rules don't apply to them. Even though there's these cameras looking at everything on the roads, the people riding these motorbikes, they just you're flabbergasted thinking, what are the rules for these things, right? They don't seem to stop for anything. I saw people jaywalking, and the reason I raised jaywalking is because see, there's a claim going around about China called social credit, China's social credit system. Now, I've got lots of friends who live permanently in China, and they assured me years ago it's all crap. It's absolute garbage. It only applies to businesses. It's a way to stop companies phoenixing, closing down, opening up somewhere else and not paying their debts. That's what the social credit system is about. And you get restrictions put on you if you do that. But this does not apply to individuals at all. But it coincided with a British TV show called Black Mirror when this claim first came out. And Black Mirror dramatized this idea of a personal social credit system. And people have conflated the two. I had heard before going to China that China has a law, a mandate, that all businesses must accept cash. Now, this was curious to me because if you truly are a surveillance state, the easiest thing to surveil is transactions. And China has the best digital payment system in the world. It's called WeChat and Alipay. It is brilliant, and they've got the best digital coverage in the world. Unlike Australia, where most of the time our 5G is failing down here because we locked Huawei out of tendering for our system. They got the best. Nevertheless, despite that, the Chinese government fines companies, any business that does not accept cash. And so I set out to test it, and I did it as a stunt. In 20 days, I was pulling out cash to pay everywhere. And every single place accepted the cash. And the only time I didn't pay in cash, if I tried, is when I pull out a 100 yuan note and for like a 3 yuan bottle of water, and the poor shopkeeper would look at me and, how do I come up with change for that, right? And then I just, because I was doing it as a stunt, and then I just pull out my phone and pay that way. But so if this is such a great surveillance system, why aren't they insisting on 100% surveillance on everyone's transactions? It's not what you think. Now, you don't have to believe me. When you say I'm a supporter of China, Mike, I'm a supporter of China's economic success, which is undeniable, and I think it should be admired. I'm a supporter of the Australia-China relationship because Australia benefits immensely from our trade with China, and I'm a supporter of China just being treated and respected as a normal country. It does not deserve the way it's talked about in the West, especially in. I came of age politically. I mean, I've been in politics for a long time, but the thing that really shaped my life was the Iraq War. And I've had to look at the 21st century, and my country and America and the UK have been involved in endless wars. And there's been a lot of suffering on the end of those endless wars. Mm-hmm. And that country that we all demonize like it's evil has not been involved in any of them. And to me, that says something, and I think it's worthy of respect. And I'm not going to allow people who lied us into those wars to turn around and tell me that China's bad. But yeah, don't believe me. I know I can talk till I'm blue in the face on this subject. What I will say is go and see it for yourself. Go take a walk. Just go see China and tell me if you feel surveilled every step of the way. You're not going to go there to commit crimes. Obviously, don't take drugs into China. I wouldn't advise it. You will suffer. But if you're just there to have a normal trip, you will not notice any of this surveillance stuff that people claim is so oppressive in China. I just didn't see it.
And I have to also agree with you there. We did some filming for the Victorian government of all things a few years ago. We invited a couple of shooters, no, not shooters, camera guys to come over with us. And they were horrified because of the ignorance. And when we went to China, truly it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. However, it doesn't still exempt the CCP from being particularly naughty when they want to. I have to ask John,
Hello.
and we're off track here a little bit. I want to ask John that we see that Keir Starmer has, he's not putting the poo-poo down on the British trade with China as much as we would have seen, say, Donald Trump was doing and is still doing. Starmer sort of thinks that providing it doesn't interfere with security and the security of the UK, if you wish to do trade with China, then so be it. What's your views on that? This is just to follow up on what Robbie was saying.
Look, Keir is Donald Trump's poodle in far too many ways. If Donald Trump says jump, Keir says how high, apart from on Ukraine. No, look, of course people should be allowed to trade with China. This is the world's second biggest economy, China. Why would we not trade with China? We have no alternative. So open doors. I mean, that's another Trumpism that will ruin the world. Tariffs. It's such a stupid idea. The world spent 40, 50 years after the Second World War getting free trade going. And look what's happened in a year. You've got a man who holds up a little chart in which he puts numbers up. China, 100%. Venezuela, 100%. No, I mean, of course, everybody should trade with everybody else, apart from Russia at the moment. And you may or may not know, Michael, the EU is discussing this week using 160 billion worth of seized Russian assets to compensate the Ukrainians and to right, because Donald Trump is about to abandon Ukraine, which is nothing short of disgusting.
And I think, John, that the idea of turning our back on a democratic nation, which practice freedoms and stuff, which Ukraine is not. So to turn his back on Ukraine, which, by the way, you've been swept up with information operation that's put out by the same group that did Bell Pottinger, that distorted the facts on the war on terror, that we were actually paid $540 million by the CIA on the war on terror. It's the same group. But having said that, Trevor, let's get back to talking things about the US and the fortress. If Donald Trump does implement all these rules and regulations, you're a bit of a soccer fan, football fan. The World Cup, which is being hosted with Mexico and the US in 2026, do you think that will have much of an effect on the ticket sales?
Well, why did I get the football question?
Because we have to get back, otherwise we're going to divert to all sorts of topics.
Yeah, I mean, I like football, but I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not that much of a fan to travel 17,000 miles to watch a football match. That's ludicrous. I can watch it in the comfort of my own home where I have no restrictions. As far as the World Cup's concerned, the irony here is the fact that they're sharing it with Mexico, a country that they built a wall against. So that's going to be a little bit difficult.
And Canada.
Yes, exactly. And Canada, yeah. But it's crazy. I mean, football is now being priced out. This World Cup is priced out. No one's going to be able to go and watch their team play in Toronto, New York, and then Mexico City. I mean, it's going to cost a fortune. My advice is not to travel. Save your money and stay at home, because you're going to waste all that money getting there, and then you're going to find out that you posted something in January 2022 which pissed off someone in the US Capitol, and you're going to end up stuck at the airport. I mean, it's going to end up being like that film with Tom Hanks where he's stuck in the airport called Terminal, isn't it? So I clearly would not waste my money to go to that. I mean, the days of the World Cup being, say, in England, the football stadiums were just within about 60 miles of each other, is gone now. I think it's probably going to be the worst World Cup that we've ever well I've ever witnessed.
What do we think about FIFA giving Donald Trump a peace prize? Come on. The sort of, as they said, have I got news for you on Friday? The trophy you got, you can buy it in B&Q, you can buy it in any shop. It's a joke, isn't it? Giving Trump
Trump,
a peace prize.
Trump's so
Well,
shameless. It's funny.
I mean,
think,
yeah.
yeah,
Listen, these awards that we see getting handed out willy nilly now, it's all done for camera. I mean, a lot of these awards don't mean anything. I mean, we've seen our own. That's one thing I'd say as well. I think this honours and award system that we have, which we all share, is outdated and needs scrapped because it's just like.
So Trevor, should we take away your MC then?
Our
I
king.
wouldn't mind, yeah. I mean, listen, MCs, and I will point this out. See, getting a gallantry medal, it does not mean the person did that massive act. Because I can tell you now, and I think we all understand this. See, for an individual to go forward and carry out what you call a bravery act, it takes about 10, 15, 20 men around you to carry out their duties, to put suppressive fire down, to do a right flank. So if you had soldiers around you not doing their job, no one would win a gallantry medal because it's a team effort.
Can I just ask you, John, could you just 1 second, please? I don't mean to be rude, and I am, but not meaning to be. You wanted to say something, and I feel a bit guilty here, so I'll let you have, because we all had our views on China or Ukraine or whatever, and I just said before that the information operation was working pretty well, but to think that the Ukraine thing was about democracy, again, it's nothing to do with democracy at all. And John, please, you were going to say something, Trevor. What's your views? Because we've all had our bit, so we're just giving you a chance to have. We're a bit all over the shop here, but I think it's important because you served with the army, you got a bit of a gong, and you know how the military works. What's your views on Ukraine, Russia, and here's something, and the EU along with Britain or the UK going into battle to stop this terrible, terrible Russian takeover of Europe and the world, which is just garbage. What's your views?
Is this directed at me? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to point this out. No soldiers like war. No, only psychopaths like war. Soldiers have to undertake orders, and we go where we're told. But if we are on the ground and we can avoid war, we will. As far as Russia and Ukraine is concerned, I do not like what's been going on. There's innocent people being slaughtered, clearly, and now Ukraine is actually filled with mercenaries, foreign mercenaries that have went there to help Ukraine defeat Russia. I get that. People want to volunteer. They're losing a lot of men. As far as I'm concerned, when the president got involved, I thought it was a good thing at the start. I don't think it's a good thing now. I do not think that part of this peace deal should be that Ukraine has to give up masses of its land in order to appease Putin. I don't agree with that at all. The sad thing is, when the war in Afghanistan ended because of that lunatic decided just to walk away and leave everyone in the lurch, we had signed up, our arms manufacturers and our NATO partners, we'd already bought ammunition, weapons, missiles, explosives. So whenever that war ended in Afghanistan, we needed somewhere to get rid of that ammunition. Now, it costs millions, sometimes billions, to get rid of ammunition. So the best thing for the rest of NATO to do was to send all that ammunition to Ukraine. So the last couple of years, Ukraine have been firing off all the ammunition that we had in Afghanistan and using it against Russia. So I never thought that war in Ukraine would end early. It would not end until all the excess ammunition from Afghanistan, which was the UK, Swedish, Norway, Denmark, Italy, Germany, France, all our ammunition needed to be used, and it's currently all being used up. Right now they're looking for a peace deal, probably because a lot of ammunition is being used up. So I don't agree with giving up land and handing it to Putin just to appease him. But as far as the EU is concerned, the EU's been pushing, in my opinion, towards trying to establish themselves as more of a sort of cohesion sort of military unit. And what that's going to do, and it has been doing the last 2 or 3 years, it's slowly but surely making NATO unemployed. You can't have two forces. You can't have NATO and a European military unit. You have to give your budget to one. At the minute, it's split. And this is why I think that the US is deciding to pull away from NATO and stop funding it, because I think the US are seeing that NATO is becoming unemployed, if that makes sense. Hopefully, I've answered a bit of your questions there, Mike.
Yeah, it has. Robbie.
Mike, look, sorry to interrupt. Look, I'm a European. You know, I live in Europe. Only two of us here live in Europe. You know, we have had the Second World War. We know what war means for Europe. Nothing to do with democracy and so on, which is why we defend Ukraine. If Russia attacks Ukraine, what's next? What's the next country it's going to attack? Look, let us be proud Europeans and say no war and stand up to Putin, because it's the only way. You know, whatever Donald Trump thinks.
Yeah, I did. Sorry, but I think we're entirely wrong. Robbie, we're going all over the shop here. So I'm going to ask.
Sorry, I have to say this. One of Joe Biden's advisors, one of these nameless people who were helping to run his dementia White House, has just come out. A woman, I forget her name offhand. I didn't know her name. Didn't know who she was.
Yeah,
but she admitted. No, not her. Someone else. She admitted that if they had have accepted neutrality in January 2022, Russia would not have invaded Ukraine. This is America's war. Joe Biden started it. Trump's finishing it.
There's no justification for invading a sovereign territory. Absolutely none.
Well, you can say that, but when people in the 90s warned against the expansion, Westerners, the leading experts back in the 90s warned against the expansion of NATO, and Russia said, if you do this, this will come to blows. And so when one country's standing still and there's a threat getting closer and closer and closer after 30 years, and the country that stands still finally knocks you in the nose, you can say, oh, you're the aggressor, but you can't say you weren't warned for 30 years, not just by the Russians, but by your own experts.
NATO was set up as an anti-Russian thing, as you well know.
See, John, you believe you've been drinking the Kool-Aid. Let's just move on back to our immigration thing, because this can go on, and part of me says let's do it, but we won't. We'll stick to the script here because we've got 12 minutes to go, and I'm looking forward to getting through this alive. The World Cup, which is as Trevor has mentioned, the World Cup. It's a long way to go, 12,000 miles to see a soccer game, and which I do agree, by the way. But the threat of people buying tickets not being able to get into the US is fairly strong. So they're going to get this priority scheme or plan that they will be prioritised. And you think, okay, there's going to be a way around that, and the priority will be that they will be first, looked at, but it doesn't ensure that they will be allowed in the US. Do you think? I'll ask John this one. John, do you think that the world is ruining the fact now that they're having the World Cup in the United States, which up until now had a fairly easy sort of way of getting in if you're a tourist, becoming much harder to get in? And then you have countries like Canada, who are closely following a surveillance state of some huge proportion, and then you have Mexico, who Donald is not all that happy with at the time, because they're right on the border. They're bringing all these illegals in. Do you think they're ruining the fact now that they chose the United States to be, or North America to be the location for the next World Cup?
No, it was the best offer. I mean, I don't know if you saw Donald last week when he got his laughable Peace Prize, but he said he wanted to rename American football because there was only one football, and that was British. No, look, the World Cup goes to whoever pays the most. Next World Cup is going to Saudi Arabia. Now, if you're gay, or any form of non-straight sexuality, don't think of going to Saudi Arabia to watch the World Cup. You might get arrested and you get your hands chopped off. So the World Cup is now a total commercial enterprise, and actually it's much worse for that. Trevor mentioned earlier on, in 1966, I think there were 16 teams or maybe 20. And this time around, there are 45, 50. You're going to get lost in who's playing whom, what for. It is just about money. What about football? I mean, the Club World Cup, which some of you may have seen earlier on this year in America, was a farce. It was a money-making farce. So the answer to your question is no, they don't rip because Giovanni, or whatever he's called, Donald's great friend, is now the hero in America. And he won't have any problems getting into America, will he?
No, and I was just thinking, John, and this is aimed at Trevor here, that the England has done such a magnificent job in the World Cup, very much like the Ashes. When was the last time?
We'll start the Ashes on Wednesday, shall we?
Yes, well, I think it's finished, isn't it, Robbie?
Pretty close.
Close to it. But look, we are looking forward to you guys putting a reasonable score together. But Trevor, when was the last time? When was the last time that England ever won a World Cup?
66.
Mike, that's uncalled for.
I know. I'm that sort of terrible person. John, you got the microphone. When was the last time you won a World Cup?
66. No, actually, we won the World Cup this year. We won the Women's World Cup.
No. The world. We're talking about blokes.
No, Women's World. We won that one.
We're talking about.
We won the Cricket World Cup.
No. Although a couple of those could have had those added advantages, maybe. I mean, knowing what they like. But I'm just thinking though, John. And Trevor, Trevor, what?
You can thank us. Listen. I might be from Northern Ireland, but I live in England. England's my place, right? I will wear my England jersey like everyone else. Now, what I will say is, yes, we aren't doing that great on the world stage at the very top level of football, but we did teach the rest of the world how to play it.
You did. And cricket.
Well, I don't know about that. That's like saying they taught a great artist how to paint. I mean, sure, he read the book, start off paint by numbers. So, I mean, and I have to say, Robbie, the English, and this is because we're going all over the shop here. We're finished really talking about the US and the fortress. We know it's just one of Donald's big wall thingo. But the English, they do go on a bit, don't they, Robbie, about their prowess. I mean, look at the Ashes. I mean, that's always a great example. Tell me, Robbie, when was the last time an English side won the AFL Grand Final?
Well, that's true. And it's funny you mentioned this World Cup thing because, believe it or not, it had crossed my mind to try and attend this one, mainly because I've got a 14-year-old son. And a few years ago, he got into football, soccer, and became a mad fanatic. And he did quite well at it. Even went to Portugal to represent his team a couple of years ago. But he sowed the seed, Dad, could we go to the next World Cup? And so I started thinking about it. And then that did cross my mind the other day when I heard about this Fortress America thing. And sorry, Franklin, that's his name. That ain't going to happen.
But your son might get in, but you'd have to. I mean, your socials. I mean,
that's I've crueled it for him, unfortunately. No, it's I have a family connection to the reason my family's English. I feel like I'm at home in this conversation. My family's English. My dad was born in England. My grandfather's from England. So they brought me up on soccer. My dad's cousin played for Tottenham. Steve Perriman, he was the captain of Tottenham. So Tottenham's our team, and then they had an Australian coach at Tottenham for a while. Greatest coach in Tottenham's history, in my view. So that was fun while it lasted. And so we really, over the last few years, really got into it. And now any hopes of going to the World Cup have been dashed.
John, I need to ask, what should if for those thinking about going to the US, for example, to the World Cup, what should they consider?
Whether they want to or not, whether they want to stand in immigration and be duffed up by ICE. If you've got anything you think will stop you going, don't go. As Trevor says, watch it on the television. believe me, it's probably the best way to watch the next World Cup. Watch,
Of course
you
it
know,
is.
watch Gary Lineker on Netflix or something. Why bother going? And in any case, it will be quite a cold atmosphere in most of the American stadiums because they don't understand it, and it's too hot at that time of the year anyway. So don't bother.
Don't bother. Trevor, if someone was thinking about going to the World Cup, knowing that they have to do all the biometrics and show their socials and so forth, what do you think they should do? If they really want to go, they probably should go through the process, shouldn't they?
Well, it's a football fan thing. I think the halftime show will be brilliant. You could get to see J-Lo or Kanye. You don't know what they're going to throw in. I don't think the Americans take football seriously. They call it soccer, don't they? I mean, halftime shows and things aren't things. It's not the done thing in a football. I do believe, depending on the heat as well, where the football's played, maybe Mexico, I think FIFA are going to have they're going to turn a match into quarters where they'll stop every 15 minutes for a break, which again is not the done thing in the world of football. Yeah, if you want to go to watch a World Cup, make sure you delete your social media. Make sure you've got nothing outstanding, no debts, and make sure you are digitally enrolled on the biometrics, and then go for it.
Look, Mike, Keir Starmer is a massive football fan, Arsenal supporter, has been, if he behaved as Donald Trump behaved, if he appeared on the pitch and everything else, he'd be even more unpopular than he is now. The World Cup will be Donald Trump's World Cup. This is an election, though he's not standing for Trump wants it to be all about him.
But
That's I'm afraid, Donald Trump's, but that's Donald Trump's modus operandi.
He has deported all the genuine football fans in America. They're Mexicans. He's deported them all.
That's terrible of you to say that. I just want to know, Robbie, would you? I mean, you mentioned your son and stuff, and we've talked about it, and you talked about how all the reasons not to go to the US. But if your son was insistent that he wanted to go to a World Cup, you went through the processes, and they're not going to stop you from getting in, even though there's all these maybe rules and regulations. They're still not going to stop you from getting in. You will have a great time, won't you? And whether you like to admit it or not, you'd be over there watching the football with your son, and you would have a great time, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know. I had friends who were in New York 2 years ago, and they're posting regularly on Facebook. And while they're in New York, they were a block away from a mass shooting. Now, tragically, we had one here yesterday in Sydney, but it's a very uncommon thing, right? So it's enormously shocking. And while we had one here, there was another one unfolding in America, and so in the 20 years that I traveled fairly regularly to America, it wasn't quite like that. These things have just erupted more and more and more. And I wouldn't know how to not be extremely paranoid about that sort of thing all the time. I mean, my son might be able to tune it out, but I doubt if I could. But Mike, I'm not sure you could get in, because Australians are getting turned around now. They don't even have this policy, but Australians are getting turned around now at LA airport and sent back. It's already hard to get into America now because of any kind of political connections, etc. So I'd have to say to my son here, you're on your own.
The Americans are treating you like Aborigines, then, are they? The way you treat the Aborigines.
No, we don't treat them bad. Actually, we did. We don't now. But there's another one for you, John. Just stop it. And Trevor,
it's a good point, John. It's a good point.
Yeah, I think the US is going to be an interesting. I think like all other Western countries, is going to experience its own downfalls in various areas, and I think if you're looking at Hawaii, for example, with the Australian visitors and Japanese visitors, then this is going to kill those numbers, and they're dying anyway. And if you look at Vegas, Vegas's marketing bureau needs to go back to school, because it's worked so well that no one is going to Vegas, and they're the two biggest probably individual tourist locations or hubs in the US specifically designed for tourism. So I think it's going to be an interesting time. John Mayer, always a pleasure chatting with you, and I appreciate your input and keeping me on my toes. We didn't have a stoush at all. Robbie Barwick from the Australian Citizens Party. Oh, by the way, Robbie, who do you follow in footy?
Tottenham.
No, in Australia, no, real football, AFL.
Oh, Lions, Brisbane Lions. I'm a Queenslander, even though I live in Melbourne.
I can't believe it. I'm a St Kilda supporter. And Trevor Court, the decorated British Army veteran. How do they, if somebody wants to see your podcast, Trevor, how do they do that?
I'm on YouTube, Trevor Cold MC. But I'm not everyone's cup of tea, mate. But I am someone's little Chardonnay. I'll say that.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a sort of an all over the shop one, but we had a very serious discussion in the last hour looking at what happened at Bondi yesterday, which opens up some great points which maybe Robbie and John and Trevor can come on and discuss later on. Thank you very much. This has been The Protagonists. This is The World Today, and we'll catch you tomorrow, hopefully, God willing. Thank you.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.